now that I've finally been able to try Necrolord as a blood DK, because we can swap covenants finally, I thought I might put out some like decision-making framework for how you might decide, you know, when to go Necro versus when to go Venthyr. I think I'm going to consider Venthyr as definitely the baseline best covenant. The way I'm modeling this is, you know, you've got 8 dungeons, and you can place them in roughly 3 categories as a blood DK. You know, must swap, can swap, and don't swap, more or less. And, you know, the rough criteria is, you know, for a must swap, it's going to be, is there some covenant bonus that you get for doing it? If yes, then that's a point in its favor. And are there pulls that shine for Necrolord versus Venthyr? And, you know, if both of those answers are yes, then you're definitely going to want to must swap for it. But, you know, if only one of them is yes, then maybe you can do a can swap for it. If they're both no, then you're probably going to do a must not swap for it. So I'll start by going over the must swaps, and at the very end of this entire segment, I'll put a section where I have talents, conduits, and soulbinds as well. I'm going to categorize Theater of Pain as an always swap dungeon, because there is a covenant bonus that you can actually get, and there are pulls, like this one, that are advantageous for the class ability. And, you know, in this pull before the Lichwing, you have 8 of these jumper guys, and A-Bomb Limb just yoinks them back in the entire time that you're fighting them. So it's pretty convenient. Usually when you're going Venthyr, you've got like Gorfien's Grasp one time, and, you know, then you call on your Druid for Ursals or something, but having A-Bomb's Limb here makes this entire fight really, really easy. Oh, and you see that? That was Bull Rush saving the day, getting that that Withering, whatever it is, kick from range. That's awesome. But otherwise, a lot of the pulls in Theater of Pain aren't very large. So, you know, Swarming Mist is great for large pulls because you're getting 40% dodge chance or whatever it is. So the more mobs, the more physical mobs that you add to it, you know, the better, you know, the more you're getting that benefit. In Theater of Pain, a lot of pulls are like this one right here, you know, like between 2 to 4 if you're lucky. Like all of Zav's Wing is basically just, you know, single pulls, so you don't get a lot of benefit out of Storming Mist. In even the Runic Power generation, unless you have, you know, enough targets, isn't realized either. So that's another point in favor of A-Bomb Limb. There are other pulls in Theater of Pain where A-Bomb Limb shines as well. Like in Mardretha, there are 2 waves of these ads that you see here, you know, and typically you have Gorfien's Grasp and nothing for the second wave. But now that you have Gorfien's Grasp and you have A-Bomb Limb, you can have A-Bomb Limb do a lot of the heavy lifting for that second one. Not a huge deal, but if you're looking for tiebreakers, basically, or just, you know, for the justification to go Necrolord, I mean, really the Covenant ability, the Covenant benefit of this dungeon would have been enough reason to. But on top of that, you know, you have a lot of pulls where Storming Mist isn't getting full value, and you have a lot of pulls where, like, you can get additional value off of A-Bomb Limb's utility. And, you know, Mordretha also has a Tank Buster, so you can use Fleshcraft for the Tank Buster as well. It's like, they all serve really as tiebreakers and, you know, justifications to say, like, okay, maybe DK will be the one that goes Necrolord for this one. Yeah, so you can see right here, like, now I can pop A-Bomb Limb, and it'll just grab all of these remote ones, yeah. And it actually, it kind of acts as a interrupt as well. If you just, you know, stutter step and keep getting out of range of casters, there are a lot of nice uses for it. I'm going to categorize Plaguefall as another must-swap dungeon. It doesn't have any pulls in particular that are advantageous to, you know, any of your Necrolord kit. For Plaguefall, it's really just about getting those slime benefits from being anything Necrolord related, and the fact that you're doing, you know, very few large pulls in Plaguefall just also serves to diminish the value of Venthyr. Like, you know, once again, with Venthyr, you get a lot of benefit from having, you know, at least 5 targets when you're using your Storming Mist ability, so you're maximizing your Runic Power, and you have a lot of dodge when you're using that as well. So, you know, the more physical mobs you can fight, like, the more benefit you get from that dodge chance. And in Plaguefall, it's really just, you know, a lot of pulls that are 3 or 4. So not a huge deal to use it, but you definitely need to get the Necrolord buff. So if you're the only thing that can be Necrolord, you definitely want to swap. Spires is one of these dungeons. It's kind of interesting. Like, you do have some large pulls, but you also have a lot of, like, small, awkward pulls. Like, you know, you've got, like, these 3 and 4 packs. One of the pulls is a 2-pack. You've got these sort of like randomly placed mobs that are a little inconvenient. So you do have a good mix of everything. I think it falls into this category of like, if you really want to just get something new experience-wise, then you can go Necro, because it'll work just fine. And you do have a lot of like jumpy guys in this place, so A-Bomb Limb will get some unique value out of sort of taming them in. But you have pulls where you won't get full value out of Insatiable Hunger, or not Insatiable Hunger, sorry, Storming Mist. But you do have pulls where you would get a lot of value out of it. So this is really just kind of up to you. And there are places in Spires where it actually would be pretty helpful to have Fleshcraft. Like the third boss, you're probably going to be the one doing all the soaking. It's actually not that hard to do the soaking if you do it properly. Like right here, you see I kind of fat-fingered my AMS, so I ended up taking a lot of these stacks of magic, but I could have at this point used Fleshcraft as a 20% DR and a lot more effective health. That wouldn't have been terrible. I mean, nothing else on this fight is really benefiting from anything that I'm getting out of Venthyr. I mean, actually, one time I did kill this boss when I died with Draven's, husk ability. So, I mean, you do get something out of it, but Storming Mist, for example, is just not going to do a lot in this fight, and neither is the teleport. It's like a convenience, to get away from those blue things, but not a huge deal. Whereas at least you get something out of Necrolord. Now, there are other dungeons that fall into a category of, I would say, like, you don't really want to swap Necrolord for them. They don't feel really good at all. Like, I did just like a Pug 19 Mists, and I definitely really missed being Venthyr for this one. Like, the maze has just a ton of pulls in a row that are all like 4 and 5, so you're getting pretty good value out of your Storming Mist for it. And like, it feels really bad to not be able to use your A-Bomb Limb on every pull, whereas like Storming Mist is up for pretty much every single one of these pulls. And by the time that the timer is syncing to be really inconvenient to use, like there's that single mob that you fight, and Storming Mist catches up cooldown wise for them. So it's not terrible to use by any means, but you don't get a lot of benefit out of anything over here. Like nothing gets joinked back in. And actually, you get some harm from using A-Bomb Limb. So during the boss fight, I, for science, attempted to find out if A-Bomb Limb would grip in the fox if the fox gets summoned, and it definitely does do that, as you can see right there. So there are times where you just don't want to use A-Bomb Limb, like on this boss, for example, where that's just like, it's really dumb. It's kind of weird that actually happens, but I guess it makes sense. It's just you've got a lot of pulls that are big enough to get full value out of Venthyr Storming Mist. You've got some pulls that actually actively hurt you for A-Bomb Limb. So I think like as a rule, just like don't use Necro on this dungeon. I mean, if you do it, it's not the end of the world. It'll be fine no matter what at this point in the expansion, unless you're doing like world first keys. So even 20s are totally fine either way. But I think it's a bad experience, in my opinion, to go Necro on this one on Mists. Now, as a rule, I would say I probably wouldn't go Necro in any of the Venthyr ones. I mean, for obvious reasons, like you need a Venthyr, but there are some honorable mentions that kind of complicate the picture, at least. Like this pull with Echelon, it's kind of like Mordretha and Top. There are basically 2 ad waves. Well, I guess, as many ad waves as you encounter if your team is a little slow on DPS. And you can Gorfume's Grasp one, and then the other one you usually just have to, take. But if you were doing this as Necro, then you could use A-Bomb Limb to gather them up for, at least one of them. So in most cases, you would actually have some decent utility out of it. But, it's just kind of like, it's a little awkward because realistically, you can't really go Necro very often here because Venthyr is a pretty rare Covenant to encounter when you're doing Pugs. So you're going to be stuck as Venthyr anyway. And there are like a lot of pulls where you get decent value out of the Venthyr abilities as well. But, there are some pulls like Echelon where it would be interesting to, see how it felt. And similarly, upstairs in that cathedral, the Nave of Pain, as it were, I feel like this one might be another one where, like, okay, like, it'd be interesting to see, like, how useful A-Bomb Limb can be here. like, often the experience of this room is that everyone forgets to, kill the things that have to be killed, and they end up running away from these little goblins the entire time. So, maybe a Limb would be pretty convenient for this room. I don't think I'll ever actually try running Necro on this, because, like, Venthyr is obviously very good for this dungeon, but it does have, like, these pulls that, at least tempt you a little bit. So just to wrap things up, I'll just, quickly throw them into a little tier list as a reference point. I think for Theater of Pain and for Plaguefall, those are really good excuses to swap the Necrolord, and try something new. You get the benefits of the Covenant abilities, in Plaguefall it's the haste buff, and Theater of Pain it's the versatility buff from the banners. There's no reason to really, want to do Venthyr in these. I mean, unless you prefer to do it, obviously, but there aren't many big pulls, so you're not getting full value out of the Venthyr ability. So, these are definitely valid must swaps, I think. For don't swaps, I think Mists falls into this category of don't swap. There's a ton of pulls where you get full value out of Storming Mist, and there aren't really any pulls where you definitely want, like, A-Bomb Limb to pull mobs in with you, or any, distinct advantages from Necrolord. Necrotic Wake is one of those where, there's a lot of large pulls, so I definitely want to keep that 40% dodge chance. I think I would recommend don't swap for Necrotic Wake. Don't swap to Necrolord for Necrotic Wake. There's no advantage to doing it for that pull. I think Spires, I would say you can swap if you want to. It can go either way. This is just maybe a boredom tiebreaker if you want to go Necrolord just to see how it is. You've got large pulls, you've got small pulls. You can't go that large ever in Spires. They force you to not go that large. So it's going to be up to you in this one. It can go either way. There's advantages to Necro, and there's advantages to Venthyr. For DOS, this is definitely going to be a don't swap. This is like the biggest of big pulls that we have available to us in dungeons in the Ardent Bulb Ring. So you're going to be doing that over and over again, basically. So yeah, there's no great reason to go Necrolord here. There's no, like, cool things that you really need to use the Necrolord shield on. Like, you could probably use it as, like, a tank buster for Mozala at the end, but it's not a huge deal. Like, you probably have no problem living through that thing as it is anyway. So it's just like, if I have to pick between, some mitigation versus some more damage and some, like, awesome utility with that 40% dodge, I would go with Venthyr here too. And the last two are pretty easy choices. These are Sanguine Depths and Halls of Atonement. So, like, unfortunately, you're going to be the one that's going to be doing the Venthyr stuff, most likely. If you do get lucky and you have somebody else to do Venthyr for you, then maybe play around with I'd say, like, Sanguine Depths could actually be a can swap dungeon if you have another Venthyr. Like, there's not actually a lot of large pulls. Sanguine Depths has a lot of casters, so the dodge benefit you're getting from Storming Mists isn't really applying to a lot of pulls in this dungeon. I think, I might try it. I have one other person in my group that can go Venthyr, so if they want to go Venthyr, then maybe I'll try doing Necrolord here. There's a lot of dangerous stuff here too. I wouldn't mind having, the Necrolord shield for the, the entry to the gauntlet, or as a refresher in the middle of the gauntlet. There's so many mobs there and so many bears that I'm guessing that the Necrolord shield cooldown reduction would be pretty high. You'd probably get at least 2, maybe 3 shields, depending on, how much you're failing in the gauntlet with your group and how many bears you're getting. Also depending on which tree you pick. But yeah, I mean, this is the time to basically experiment with WoW. I think we're going to be doing more or less what we're doing right now until, the next expansion comes out. So try to have fun with it, because it's going to be a while. So good luck.